A big update on Dejan Stribling and the 49ers receivers from Sonoma. And a word on Laken Tomlinson, possibly the most durable 49er of the Shanahan era. Started 80 straight games for them over 5 seasons. The left guard tells me that he had a procedure to remove a bone spur from his left heel and is feeling as good as he has had in years. He's been training hard and hopes to join a team needing a veteran guard soon.
But some worse news for the 49ers. They worked out 3 centers. Ominous news at center, just like the fog coming in over the Golden Gate Bridge. 3 centers, Doug Kramer, Joe Mikowski, and Lycidas Smith worked out for the 49ers today, likely because Brett Toth, the backup center, is going to be out for a little while longer. Look, Lombardi herself makes a cameo from Sonoma. Foggy in the city this morning, sunny in Sonoma. Then you guys know I like to feature Bay Area eateries. The Sunflower Cafe in Sonoma. That was the chicken and avocado grilled cheese, and then the steak and eggs. And look, it's the star of the show. Anyway, let's get on with it. Let's get on with the news. Back in the city, 49ers made these 3 workouts today. We'll see if they sign one of these centers, but Brett Toth has missed the last couple of practices, and it's been an undisclosed injury. He is the next man up beyond Jake Brendel at center, which is very, very important in this 49ers offense. Think back to the disaster of 2020. I know that so many guys got hurt that season, but one thing that was really, really bad for the 49ers is that they got to like their 4th or their 5th string center, and it turned into an absolute disaster. It's not like the other offensive line positions where you could plug somebody in and, of course you got to teach them the assignments of that particular spot. They are not, though, at left guard, left tackle, right guard, or right tackle, the communication nerve of the entire offensive line. The center is responsible for making sure that the protections are called right for all 5 offensive linemen, really the conduit of communication between the quarterback and everybody else. In this Shanahan scheme, the center is really important. And once centers start going down, you run the risk of absolute catastrophe at that position. And with Brett Toth, right now, the 49ers working these 3 guys out, it really signals that Brett Toth might be out for an extended or period of time or a few practices. I don't know how long it's going to be, but I do remember 2020 was so ugly for the 49ers. So we should look to establish exactly where the 49ers are at this center position, because right now, as it stands, they haven't signed one of these tryouts yet. But as it stands, the next man up might be the rookie Carver Willis, who currently is in the concussion protocol. I am about to share the 49ers 90-man depth chart with you. There you go. We have a close look at it, and you could see here at center, Toth is hurt, undisclosed injury. Next man up might be Drake Nugent, who actually has been impressing the 49ers over the course of this training camp, but he is an undersized player. There's no question about it. That's why he is exclusively a center. The 49ers aren't even thinking about Drake Nugent to play the guard position. And then, of course, there's Carver Willis. I talked so much about him in the offseason. He already did some cross-training at center in his final collegiate season at the University of Washington. But the issue there is that center has got such a large cerebral load. It's, I don't remember a single time over the course of the last decade that a rookie has stepped into center in a Kyle Shanahan offense. So, I think this is the final season under contract for the 49ers starter, Jake Brendel, and maybe the 49ers were thinking about grooming Carver Willis to play that center position in 2027 and beyond. But I think it might be ambitious to expect him to step in there here right away in 2026. Hence the 3 workouts today. Kramer, Mikowski, and Lycidas Smith, all players with center backgrounds and center experience, and essentially centers at this NFL level. Doug Kramer has actually played some fullback as well, goal line fullback in the NFL. And we know that the 49ers like their centers to be athletic. That is imperative for San Francisco. You've got to be able to reach block. You have to reach the second level. It's important at guard as well, but that left guard position, that's going to be more of an enforcer spot. That's going to be your strongest interior offensive lineman. You might be okay with a little more of a finesse orientation for your right guard and especially your center, but there's got to be cerebral mastery at that center spot. Otherwise, things can get ugly very, very quickly. So that is a position of alarm, I think, to watch right now for the 49ers. You guys know me, I'm balanced about these injuries. I'll tell you that a lot of them are overblown, and especially at receiver. I told you this would be a big receiver update, and it certainly will be. The receiver position for the 49ers is not in a dire spot at all. Both Dejon Stribling and Mike Evans, I don't even have the injury shades for these two guys, because if there were a game tomorrow, both would play. Both would be at 100% capacity. The 49ers are managing them and hamstring stiffness for Stribling and what they say is a quad strain for Mike Evans, as they should manage a quad strain for Mike Evans. He's 33 years old. He's a walking Hall of Famer. He doesn't need to be on that practice field any more than you actually need him there to install a few plays, and then you could move forward, because he's going to be fine for you over the course of the regular season, regardless of how much he practices in training camp. So at receiver, you're essentially waiting for Christian Kirk right now. And I think in the case of Jacob Cowing, we can get into this over the course of this show. I think that he's in the midst of being leapfrogged on this depth chart by somebody like Junior Bergen, maybe even by somebody like a Will Pauling. That is a punt returner competition as well. So whereas the injuries at receiver are definitely overblown, the injuries along the offensive line are quietly threatening how the 49ers may operate in times when they need to break glass in case of emergency. And there are always emergencies in the NFL, because injuries are going to happen over the course of the regular season. So, for example, we've talked about the dramatic shift at left guard over the course of the past couple of days. Connor Colby no longer taking snaps with the ones. Connor Colby instead now taking snaps with the twos and the threes. That has meant Robert Jones is taking snaps with the ones. Left guard is the one starting position that is still not determined for the 49ers. Would the 49ers be comfortable with Robert Jones starting? Is the starter even on their roster? Is somebody like Carver Willis an actual candidate for left guard? Is that being put on hold by the concussion protocol? I mean, there's so many different ways to look at what's happening at left guard. And then you realize you need depth at both left and right guard. And that's probably why Connor Colby is now playing at right guard during practice. But now you have this center issue pop up. And I think, when we didn't know Brett Toth's injury, we still don't, but we didn't want to jump to any conclusions. Now, though, the 49ers are working out centers. And the only reason you'd work out centers is because Toth might be out for at least a few more practices. Worst case scenario, he's out for a longer time beyond that. And you realize that you need to fill a backup center spot that is in a sketchy, precarious position as we speak. And that has burned the 49ers in the past before. So I think that whereas receiver is going to be fine with Stribling and Mike Evans, even without Ricky Pearsall, if you have both of those guys, you've now signed Deebo Samuel, you're going to get Christian Kirk back. You have Demarcus Robinson, Jordan Watkins is having a good camp. Somebody like Junior Bergen might be emerging. Anyway, Brock Purdy, I wrote about this on the San Francisco Standard, and this is something that is worth putting up on the screen right now. This is the article that came out today. I'm going to go ahead and toss this into the description. I'll send it to Mike. Brock Purdy was down his top 5 receivers over the past 2 practices. So that is Mike Evans, that is Ricky Pearsall, that is Dejon Stribling, that is Christian Kirk, and that is George Kittle, who I think very clearly fits in with the 49ers' top 5 receivers. Despite being down his top 5 receivers, Brock Purdy went 24 of 28 with several perfect deep dime touchdown passes. 2 of the receivers who have caught bombs over the past 2 practices in that 24 of 28 stretch are Kadarrell Hodge, signed 2 days ago, and Malik Turner, who's better known as a gunner on the 49ers special teams unit. So Purdy is going to be able to make it work to a certain degree, regardless of who's out there. We saw it last year for the 49ers. They won 6 straight. They beat Philadelphia in the NFC wildcard game. Purdy put up numbers like this. This was his 3rd down performance. Further to the right and further up is where you want to be. It was an awesome, awesome performance for Brock Purdy. But the main line of my article, the main graph of my article is here. I'm just going to read it as we talk about receiver and then shift back to this discussion of the offensive line. Of course, even though Brock Purdy can excel to a certain degree without his big guns, I mean, that makes him exceptional. There are very few quarterbacks who can do that, but the 49ers will still need their biggest guns back at wideout to beat the best competition. That much was clear last season. Even after Purdy led a skeleton crew to 6 straight wins and a playoff victory over the Philadelphia Eagles, the eventual champion Seattle Seahawks, who boasted a historically good defense, smothered the 49ers twice. Remember, though, that Purdy and the 49ers, when they had more offensive firepower in week 1, actually beat that Seattle team. Seahawks fans aren't going to like that last sentence. But the point is that if the 49ers have some firepower, they will be able to swing with the best in the league because they have Brock Purdy. Some firepower at wideout. Now, the next step for the 49ers is to not suffer catastrophic failure along the offensive line. They've got a really good Hall of Fame walking Canton-bound left tackle in Trent Williams. They're fine at center as long as Jake Brendel doesn't get hurt. I think they're above average at right guard with Dominic Pooney, who's having a good training camp. I think they're above average at right tackle with Colton McKivitz. So the big question is who fills left guard? That battle is ongoing. And then you cannot have a precipitous drop-off at center if Brendel gets hurt. He's 34 years old, final year of his deal. What happens after Brendel? Brett Toth was a huge signing, but he's got that undisclosed injury now. That's why we moved to talking about the 49ers workouts today. Who do they sign? They tomorrow they practice again in earnest, and then they've got the Players' Day off on Sunday. So if there is a signing out of these 3 guys that they worked out today, it will either happen or be announced a little bit later today or right before practice tomorrow. Sometimes the 49ers just wait until the last moment to announce it. So one of these 3 guys probably joining the 49ers team. And that center position is skating on thin ice, and it's something that I don't think the media should be ignoring. I think that the Evans and the Stribling injuries, which for Stribling is not even an injury, it's just hamstring tightness, have been way overblown. Some of the defensive line stuff has been way overblown, but this offensive line stuff is not overblown because you have such a narrow margin for error at that one center position. All right, it's Friday afternoon. We're up in Sonoma today, and I am ready to answer some of your questions. It's kind of bright behind me. Well, it's just like the camera. I don't have like this lighting that somehow is able to illuminate me and not make the background a little oversaturated, but you can see the city just a little bit behind me. It's not the most glorious day. It's not like that big live that we did from the roof a few days ago where you couldn't see a cloud in the sky. Now you can see some of that fog rolling in behind us, and I hope everybody's going to have a good weekend, and hopefully I can get it off to a good start by answering some of your questions. So I see comments like this, and they don't make a whole lot of sense to me. I'm just going to read it. Unless and until the 49ers acquire blue chip talent on the offensive line, they're not serious about improving the offense as a whole. All right, so who did you want the 49ers to acquire? They didn't pick until late in the first round. They select an offensive tackle late in the first round. That tackle is not even playing for the 49ers this year because he's not going to be better than Trent Williams or Colton McKivitz, who are both, I mean, Trent's the best in the game. Colton McKivitz is an above average right tackle. Was there an offensive lineman the 49ers could have picked late in the first round that would have unseated one of the starters right now? No, there wasn't. What was the biggest problem for the 49ers offense last year? It wasn't the blocking of the offensive line, not by a long shot. The biggest problem was separation in the wide receiver room. The biggest problem was blocking on the perimeter. That's why they weren't notching the explosive runs that they needed to notch in order to open up the pass game. So the investment, very naturally for the 49ers, to up the level of the offense, by the way, which finished number 6 out of 32 teams last year. So an offense that finished number 6 last year and had a better offensive line than the offense which finished number 1 in 2023, you can't go and tell me that the offensive line is the biggest issue on that football team. It just doesn't make any logical sense. The biggest issue is the biggest weakness, and the biggest weakness has been wide receiver separation for 2 years. Therefore, the biggest 49ers investment has come in wide receiver. Offensive line is not this, oh, we need to flip this switch and everything is going to be fixed proposition that a lot of people think that it is. I think that you need to step back and have some perspective and see that probably 30 out of 32 teams are complaining about certain parts of their offensive line. Why? Well, it's a supply and demand issue. There are fewer capable offensive linemen in supply than there is demand for that position because more of the athletic talent is on the defensive line. That's just how the course of talent flow and professional football has gone for over a decade now. Brandon Thorne, who does a great job covering the O-line, big film junkie, just good analyst online. You could check it out. He came out with his offensive line rankings, and the 49ers were average or better, and mainly they skewed toward better at every single one of their positions, except for left guard because he didn't know who was going to start for the 49ers at left guard. But Trent Williams, elite. Jake Brendel was, I think, right in the middle. I think he was 16 out of 35 or just a little bit above average for the 49ers at center. Dominic Pooney was a top 10 right guard, so they've got top 10 at 2 spots according to Brandon Thorne. And Colton McKivitz was slightly above average at right tackle. I would even argue that based on his trajectory, I'm not going to argue that Brandon Thorne is wrong about his ranking right now, but Colton has gotten significantly better every single season. So his trajectory suggests that he's going to be in the top 13 this year based on how he's been improving year in, year out. So objectively there, you look at the 49ers offensive line and it was solid last year. The one big concern, which they semi-fixed by the end, was left guard because they moved Spencer Burford there and he was playing better than Connor Colby. And that's why it's a concern this year because an option that wasn't even good enough to finish the season, and Connor Colby was the one that started this training camp as the first teamer at left guard, and now he's been demoted to the second team and even the third team in some instances over the last 2 practices. So the 49ers obviously still need to figure out that left guard position. Then it's a matter of depth for the 49ers offensive line. And this is an issue, again, for essentially every single team in the league. There's one team that probably bucked the depth concern trend on the offensive line, and it was the Philadelphia Eagles. Guess who the 49ers signed this offseason to try to improve the depth of their offensive line? A Philadelphia Eagle. That's the guy around whom we're basing this discussion, Brett Toth. Toth was a backup, but a very good one that Jeff Stoutland, the O-line coach for the Eagles, developed over the years. And last year, he ended up starting 2 games at center and 2 games at left guard. And he was good at both positions to the point where Eagles fans were like, is this guy better than our starting center? Is he better than Cam Jurgens? And I would say those are just fans being fans. Don't overreact there. But Toth was legitimately solid, especially for a backup at those 2 positions. So anybody who's mad at the 49ers for not trying to improve the offensive line, they literally went out and got one of the better backup interior linemen in the entire league over the course of free agency. Like Toth was solid for the Eagles at center and left guard, the 2 positions where the 49ers really, really have needed depth. But now the undisclosed injury has come, and the 49ers are, I think, skating on some thin ice because you can't have it fall off of a cliff at center, and obviously you wouldn't like it to fall off of a cliff at left guard. I'll say this, I've been out at camp every single day. During one-on-ones, up until he got hurt, I thought Brett Toth was the 49ers' best interior pass protector outside of Dominic Pooney. We know that Pooney is a lock at right guard. But I thought that Toth had acquitted himself better than Connor Colby, Thought that Toth had acquitted himself better than Robert Jones. Thought Toth had acquitted himself better than Carver Willis, better than Nick Zakel. The issue is that since he's your backup center, you don't want to put him in the game at the same time as Jake Brendel, because if both Toth and Brendel get hurt on game day, you might not and probably won't have any other centers in uniform. And as I led this show off, I said that you are in a big time pickle if you don't have good center play. The 2020 49ers suffered when center fell off of a cliff. Hronis Grasu was his name. He was their fifth string center. They go into Seattle in week 8. They had lost Weston Richburg for the season, for his career at that point. We didn't know it yet, but he was done for his career. They had lost the backup Ben Garland. They had lost Daniel Brunskill. I think they had lost the fourth string center as well, because I'm pretty sure they were on their fifth string center. It was a practice squad guy named Hronis Grasu. There were two absolute practice squad disasters for the 49ers in that 2020 season. One was Brian Allen, the cornerback against the Dolphins. I believe that was week 6. I want to say it was week 5 or week 6. He got torched by Ryan Fitzpatrick, and the Miami Dolphins at an empty Levi's Stadium. And 2 was the Hronis Grasu experiment in week 8 at Seattle that effectively started the beginning of the end for the 49ers playoff hopes that year. They finished with 6 wins in 2020. Injury hell. Everybody remembers that year. So that's why I caution people to pay attention to the workouts the 49ers put in today, because they need to make sure that they set themselves up to prevent a similar collapse at the center position. Say, for the 49ers, did you guys see how much Tyler Linderbaum signed for with the Raiders? It was a complete market-breaking deal. You know, you could say if this and if that. Here, let me type this in. I forgot how much it was, but it was such an obscene amount of money. Only a team with no good players outside of Max Crosby could afford it. 3 years, $81 million. $60 million guaranteed for Tyler Linderbaum. So 81 divided by 3. He signed for $27 million a year. We were talking just a couple of years ago when Drew Dahlman, who just retired, was out there on the market. We were talking about, 15, 16 million. That's pushing it for a center. Then I think Drew Dahlman signed for 20 from the Chicago Bears, something close to that. Linderbaum the very next year signed for 27 million. There is no way any contending team in their right minds would pay that. That's a Raiders type of offer. We'll see how it works out for them. But 27 million a year, that was like a 70% increase to the center market. So no, the 49ers were never contenders for a player at that price. You can't just go and overpay a player by that much and expect to field a sustainable roster. Yes, no way the 49ers could afford that. Sorry, I'm just simple dollars and cents. You guys know that I keep track of the salary cap. They weren't going to be able to afford Deebo Samuel at anything over $5 million this year. So they gave him a deal that says, $3.7 million guaranteed. And then he could earn incentives up to $7 million, but they're not going to have to pay that against the salary cap until the following season. And that's only if Deebo meets those incentives. So you cannot just go out and commit blind amounts of money and expect your team to stay afloat year over year. It's just bad team management. So they had to find a way to carefully craft a Deebo deal. 54% of it's guaranteed, 46% of it is incentive based, in a way that shows you that every million, every 100,000 counts when you've got the escalating costs that the 49ers do. I could show you another graphic that I created. This is Brock Purdy's contract and a look at how the prorations work on that contract. So the prorations are paid, and those are all the color-coded columns here. So blue, green, yellow, and teal, those are all bonuses. We're in 2026, so the green bonus got paid out this year. I can remove the text title here for you so you could see the bottom. And at the very bottom, that he earned a $38 million option bonus this year. You could see at the very bottom of the green column. However, the 49ers only pay $7.6 million of that $38 million in 2026. The next $7.6 million is paid in 2027. The next $7.6 million is paid in 2028. It is stretched out. Next year, there's a $15 million option bonus that he gets, and he gets $3 million of it per year. And if he plays really well this year, he might renegotiate, and it might be even bigger. So as you can see, even though Brock Purdy has earned a lot of the money up front, the 49ers don't face the salary cap hits until later, which means that the cap numbers grow. So this year it's 24.8 million. Next year it's 30.8 million. Then in 2028, it balloons to 57.6 million and then 72.5 million in 2029. So you've got to save money to handle a salary cap hit that eventually is going to grow by about $50 million for just one player. Otherwise, you're going to have to cut the entire team around Brock Purdy. That's what the 49ers had to do back in the late 90s around Steve Young. They could have just started not being able to afford guys like Ricky Waters. Yes, they pushed a lot of chips in. No, it was not a sustainable way of action for the 49ers. So they're trying to play both sides, and I think they're doing as good of a job as they possibly can to play both sides. They're prorating these contracts. They're surfing the wave of the rising salary cap. They have spent more money than any other team in the NFL over the course of the Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch tenure. The 49ers have been the NFL's biggest spenders over the past 10 years, period. No team has spent more money. If we look at a guy like Tyler Linderbaum or any free agent the 49ers fans just want them to get, and they complain that, oh, we should have spent more, you're asking the team that has already spent the most money in the league over the past decade to spend even more. They're already just squeezing through this salary cap situation by pushing all of these hits back, and you want them to spend even more. This is not how life works. That's not how a salary cap league works. I'm sorry to be the one that has to break that news, but business is business, and the 49ers, to a great degree, have to operate the way that they're currently operating. And if you're upset about your team spending more money than any other team in the NFL, I probably would recommend getting out of the fan business altogether, because there's no other team that's going to make you happy, because every other team is spending less money than the 49ers. Eric Gomes, always good comments. 1,000%. Well, that's not mathematically sound, Eric. Percentages can only go up to 100. Just giving you a hard time. I think Eric Gomes is a San Francisco native. He knows the city really, really well. Whenever I talk about an area or a restaurant, he's always familiar with it. Really, really good viewer of ours here on the channel. All right, Ryan said, isn't Purdy under? Yeah, Purdy is a very small salary cap hit this year, but it's not really about this year. It's about future seasons, and they're all connected because unused salary cap space moves from season to season. So you have to keep 2027, 2028, and beyond in mind throughout this whole thing. Good point from Mike. Is Tyler Linderbaum $25 million better than Jake Brendel? The answer is no. Like last year, Brendel was a top 10 to 15 center when it came to pass protection. Like, I'm serious. No matter what people will try to troll you with online, if you have perspective, you look at the tape, you look at the metrics, 10 to 15, above average for the 49ers. It was fine. It worked. The year before, it wasn't. I don't think it was fine. He had the knee tendonitis, but credit to Jake Brendel for getting past that. He put in a solid 2025 season. So beyond that, what can you possibly feel entitled to? Right? A team with a narrow salary cap situation, there may be two centers out there who are actually worth 20 million plus. I don't think there's a single center out there who's worth 27 million, but the Raiders paid Tyler Linderbaum 27 million. I think we could all agree that the Baltimore Ravens are a better franchise than the Las Vegas Raiders in terms of knowing how to value players, knowing how to build a team. They've seen a lot more success lately, right? The Ravens had Linderbaum and decided not to keep him because they thought that his asking price and the price that the Raiders ultimately paid was way too high. So it's the market. Sometimes there's going to be a bad team that distorts it in free agency. Actually, typically that is the case. And that's why you would like to build a team through the NFL draft or through some trades. The Rams have done that. The 49ers have done that because trades are a way to exchange draft picks for favorable contracts. When you look at the Purdy contract, whenever you trade for a player, and I know the 49ers didn't trade for Purdy, but just to explain, say that this was somebody else on a different team. If you traded for this contract, the 49ers had already paid the blue column, the prorated signing bonus, and they already now paid the option bonus, the green column. So you would just acquire the rest of the contract while the team that originally had the player, they already footed the bill for the blue and the green, which is why you can get deals when it comes to trades, at least deals on the salary cap, because you acquire a contract that's already been partially paid by the previous team. Should the 49ers be worried about the videos of Aaron Donald working out? I think it's relatively clear at this point that Aaron Donald is going to be back with the Rams. I'd be shocked if he isn't. I think there's a certain amount of ring chasing going on. He didn't want to stick around through the rebuilding years for the Rams, but credit to that guy. He continued working out. I mean, I watched some of Aaron Donald's workouts the past couple of years. He's putting up 110-pound dumbbells and just repping them like it's nothing. And the guy is he's a physical specimen. He's Aaron Donald. Where is he going to be after 3 full seasons off? Is he still going to have 2021 Aaron Donald impact? No way, right? That's not going to happen. Is he still going to be an above average defensive tackle? Probably. Can he still move the needle for the Rams? Maybe a little bit. Is he going to move it as much as Myles Garrett? No. I'm more curious than anything. I'm in it for entertainment. I would love to see Aaron Donald come back to the NFC West because we're going to run a live then and we'll have a lot of people and we could talk about Aaron Donald and Deebo Samuel back in the division, same season. Remember Aaron Donald acting like he didn't know who Deebo Samuel was back in 2020 and then Deebo went off against the Rams multiple times. That's what makes this so fun. That's what makes this great. I don't think that Aaron Donald would materially change the Rams' chances at winning a Super Bowl. I think they're already the favorites right now because they've got a really good front line of the roster. I think the issue for the Rams right now is A, do those guys stay healthy? That's the question for any star-laden team. And B, where exactly will the depth rank of this team? Because we know that they're good on the front lines, but where will the depth of this team truly rank for the Rams? And I'll add C, will special teams ruin everything for the Rams because it did in 2025? Those are my 3 biggest questions. And because Aaron Donald, I don't expect him to be all pro Aaron Donald anymore. I expect him to be a solid player if and when he does come back. But because, those are the most realistic expectations for Aaron Donald, he doesn't pertain to the 3 biggest questions surrounding the Rams. And if they don't raise out of the league cellar and special teams, it won't matter what they do on offense and defense. They were a poor man's version of the 2023 49ers last year, right? The 2023 49ers had the best offense in the league. The 2023 49ers had a defense that was okay, but leaked oil in certain spots. So the Rams have obviously tried to plug those spots with Trent McDuffie and then Myles Garrett, but they also did lose Jared Verse, which is some subtraction to go with the obvious addition. But special teams, I know they've replaced the coordinator. Special teams is what sunk the 2023 49ers. It sunk the 2025 Rams. And unless the Rams are truly able to fix special teams, they will not be in position this year to overcome what sunk them in 2025. The Ram season's on Stafford's back. And, I respect that part of it. They realize that Stafford is maybe at the end of the road. This could be the last year. And there is some mortgaging of the future there. You give up Jared Verse, who was a promising young defensive end, had some contractual control there. You give him up to the Browns. You get Myles Garrett, who's an older defensive end. You gamble that because he's a special talent, he could play further into his 30s at a very high level than the typical player. He's had some issues the Rams are calling minor already in training camp. So it is all a big gamble. We'll see how it pays off. The 49ers, though, literally are not worried about the Rams. They should be worried about themselves. They shouldn't be worried about the Seahawks. They should be worried about themselves. A healthy 49ers team beats the Rams and the Seahawks. They still have more star players, probably have more quality depth than the Rams and the Seahawks. The proof is in what happened last year when an injured 49ers team beat Seattle in week 1. They weren't nearly at full strength at receiver, and they beat the Seahawks on the road. And then a 49ers skeleton crew, a very injured 49ers team, beat the Rams on the road in week 5. And that's actual evidence. You look at that and you say, okay, well, if the 49ers can find a way to keep this intact, and that's why they're being precautionary with a lot of these guys over the course of training camp, they can go toe-to-toe with the Rams and the Seahawks easily. I mean, that's how this 49ers team is built. Hall of Famers up and down the roster. A really damn good quarterback in Brock Purdy. Again, if you want to read about Brock Purdy, this right here, let me get it up on the screen, is available on the San Francisco Standard. Let's get that headline in there. The Brock Purdy deep ball with unknown receivers. The 49ers Layer King, that is Raheem Morris's nickname for him, tests his arm. I'm looking out at the bay right now, trying to see how choppy it is because I got to go swimming after this. I can see it through that window. Release the substation results. Is that a new thing online? That's pretty funny. This is true. Even beyond draft capital, Vita Vea would cost money for the 49ers. I think the defensive tackle contracts are up to $28 million, which is like Tyler Linderbaum. I don't know if Vea would command $28 million, but would still be a massive, massive investment at defensive tackle, unless he'd be willing to take a discount to play 7 miles away from where he went to high school. Milpitas, shout out to them. See, comments like this just do not live in reality. You are crazy. The Niners healthy are not better than Seattle. All right, so why did the Niners close to healthy literally beat Seattle and statistically dominate them last year? Why did the 49ers injured beat the Rams last year? Guys, 1 + 1 = 2. The 49ers mostly healthy statistically dominated the Seahawks. They would have won by multiple possessions had Jake Moody not been their kicker. And the 49ers, with a skeleton crew, literally beat the Rams. You can't argue with facts. I don't care what random national media tells you. They just make stuff up so you can click on it and be angry. I actually care about what the tape and what the data tells me, and that is that the 49ers, healthy, are definitely better than the Seahawks and the Rams. That's why the substation is such a big point of discussion. That's why the 49ers injuries are such a big point of discussion. There has never been a team as injured as the 2025 49ers in NFL history to win 13 games. Despite the fact that they were completely decimated, they still beat the defending world champions, the Philadelphia Eagles, on the road in the playoffs, and they still won 13 games. But they were so hurt that they couldn't beat the very best at the end of last season. Early in the season, when they were healthier, they beat the Seahawks. And they beat the Rams. And they weren't even healthy when they beat the Rams. That's not a controversial statement. Go look at the box score of 49ers Seahawks week 1. Seahawks fans hate to hear it because they know that if the 49ers were healthy, they wouldn't have won a Super Bowl last year. But that's just the way it is. Sometimes you get lucky in this league. Sometimes you don't. In 2023, the 49ers had good injury luck. That's why not winning the Super Bowl was so brutal for the 49ers that year, because they were healthy in 2023. They should have finished the deal in 2023. That was a gut punch that stuck with them through 2024. It ruined a whole season after it. They couldn't get it done despite being healthy. But 2024, 2025 were not healthy seasons for the 49ers. They still somehow won 13 games in 2025. They still beat Seattle and the Rams on the road. The question moving into 2026 is, how healthy can the 49ers be? Because I can guarantee you that neither the Seahawks nor the Rams have as many yellow pillar highlights here. Those are foundational pillar players. Purdy, McCaffrey, Juszczyk, Evans, Trent Williams, George Kittle could be shaded in yellow too, but he's hurt right now. Osa Digizua, Bosa, let's shade him in yellow as well. Fred Warner, Diameter Lenore. I mean, Eddie Pinheiro, best kicker in the NFC West. I mean, they are loaded along the front line. They are absolutely loaded. If they stay healthy, they're going to win this thing. I don't think there's much of a question. If they stay healthy, they're going to win this thing. But that's why it's the biggest question surrounding the 49ers. I would say that Jack Jones has been more noticeable than Nate Hobbs. Jack Jones had an interception of Mac Jones the other day. I haven't seen all too much from Nate Hobbs at practice, but Jack Jones has been very, very active on the back end for the 49ers. So you said the Seahawks' best defensive player was hurt week 1. Guess who else was hurt week 1? George Kittle. Guess who else was hurt week 1? Or wasn't? He was still hurt. He also wasn't playing. Brandon Ayuk. So the 49ers didn't have an X receiver. The 49ers were missing more than Seattle in week 1, and they still beat the Seahawks. All you want to say is Nicky Manwari was hurt. Well, the 49ers had more injury. They were entering that week. Everybody was freaking out about Christian McCaffrey not being available. He ended up being available. Probably was a little bit sore. He tweaked something in practice. I forgot exactly what it was that week. But the 49ers didn't have an X receiver. They were in big time question. Jawan Jennings wasn't fully healthy either, but they had big questions at wide receiver. Thankfully, they had Ricky Pearsall in that week 1 game, and they got the win, but they were nowhere near full strength. The hope this year, now that you've replaced Ayuk with Mike Evans, would be that you have an X. You have Dejon Stribling. Of course, you don't have Pearsall. That's brutal for the 49ers. But you have re-signed Deebo Samuel, and you've had plenty of time to integrate him over training camp. You might not have George Kittle for week 1, but you hope you get him back soon. You have more depth at running back. And now we're talking about these injuries along the offensive line. Those are obviously something to keep an eye out for. But you're not going to win an injury debate regarding the 2025 49ers by saying, well, their opposition was more hurt than them. It just wasn't the case. Even when the 49ers were beating the Seahawks and the Rams, they were more injured than the Seahawks and the Rams. What starter should the 49ers trade for Vita Vea? Well, I would think that if a trade does happen with the Bucks, you would have to send a younger defensive lineman. You might have to send an Alfred Collins or somebody like that to Tampa Bay. So it's unlikely to happen, but it's also something that we can't discount given Vita Vea's preference to be in the state of California. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. Some of that trouble brewing at center. 49ers work out 3 centers today. Doug Kramer, Joe Mikowski, and Lecitus Smith. Brett Toth, undisclosed injury. We'll see when he's back, but 49ers need to make sure they've got a solid backstop behind Jake Brendel. Hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. I'm going to go hop into the San Francisco Bay.